Okay, so our today's lesson is going to be about the structure of heart. Structure of heart. Now we all know that heart is one of the muscular organ, right? And the muscles that make up the heart are called as cardiac muscles, right? And cardiac muscles have got a specific structure that they have got fiber-like structures, but they have branches between them, right? They are connected with the other cardiac muscle fibers, right? Like this. And if we see the structure in closely, you will see small patterns repeated in these muscle fibers, and they are multinucleated. Multinucleated means that there can be many nuclei that you can see in one muscle fiber. It does not mean that it is one cell has got many nucleus, because its structure is very unique, and its structure shows us a syncytium kind of structure. Syncytium बोलते हैं कि जब एक ही जगह पर बहुत सारे न्यूक्लियाई प्रेजेंट हो, because we cannot see that these intercalated discs does not mean that they are the compartments, or they are the, you can say, walls that are separating the cells. They are just the patterns. If I show you from your book, right, you can see that the your book will also show you these intercalated discs in the muscle fibers, right? These are the cardiac muscle fibers, as you can see here, that they have got intercalated discs present on them. Now, these are the intercalated discs that you see here, right? And they are not cell membranes that are separating the cells from one another. And these are their nuclei. These are the branches that are connecting the cardiac muscle fibers together. And they have got many nuclei present in each muscle fiber, you can see here. So these are the cardiac muscles, and they are involuntary muscles. Why involuntary? Because they can never get fatigued, right? They work day and night, and that's why we say that they are the, you can say, the involuntary muscles. They work day and night, and they have got small striations on them, right? And these striations basically are the small patterns that are repeated in throughout the muscle fiber, right? So these are the cardiac muscles that make up the heart. And if you see heart is one of the muscular organ that you can see here in this diagram. And this diagram shows you a conical shaped organ, right? And the muscles that make up this organ are called as cardiac muscles. And here you can see a tree-like structure, and this tree-like structure is not actually tree. It is basically bigger and smaller blood vessels that are making a network around the heart, and they are meant to supply oxygenated blood to the muscles of the heart. And these blood vessels are called as coronary arteries, right? So coronary arteries are basically the blood vessels that are supplying oxygenated blood, or you can say nutrient containing blood, to the muscles of the heart, so that they can be supplied with these things, because they have to contract and relax, and that for that they need energy, and energy will be provided by the aerobic respiration taking place in the muscle fibers, or you can say the cardiac muscles, right? So if there is any problem in this coronary artery, like a clot, a patient may get a heart attack, or you can say angina will be the result of minor clots, or you can say the clots that are supplying that are restricting the blood flow to any part of the heart, right? So this is basically the human heart, showing the blood vessels in the photograph lying immediately below the surface of the heart, and have been injected with gelatin containing a dye. The cardiac muscles was treated to make it transparent to a depth of 2 millimeter, to allow the blood vessels to be seen, right? So so that they can be observed easily on the surface of heart, right? So this is conical shaped organ, and if you see the annotated diagram of heart, we can say that heart has got, these are the two blood vessels. This is the annotated diagram, right? Man-made diagram. So it has got two or you can say a pair of coronary artery. Obviously, where there is an artery, there will definitely be a vein. So coronary arteries are supplying blood to the muscles of the heart, and coronary vein will be the one that is bringing that blood back to the vena cava. Right. So here you can see there are some blood vessels that are branched. There are some blood vessels that are coming out from the different regions of the heart. Right. And they, if you see the detailed structure of the heart, you will see that there is a pair of vena cava, right? One that is superior vena cava and one that is inferior vena cava. And these vena cavas are supplying blood, bringing blood back to the heart because they are big veins, right? They are big veins. And as the lower one is called as inferior because it is bringing blood back from the lower regions of the body. The one that is coming from the upper body regions, or you can say from the head, that is called as superior vena cava, and they both are opening into the right atrium. This is the right atrium, right? And lower to it, this is the right ventricle. And these ventricles are separated with the septum. When I'll show you the cross section area, I'll show you that how inside the heart the chambers are separated. This is the right atrium, this is the left no, left atrium, right? Left atrium will be on the other side, right? It is not visible at the front because of the you can say the view of the heart, right? And when I'll make the cross section area, I'll show you that where these ventricles and atria are present. Or lower to atrium, you can see that this side is basically the right ventricle and this side will be the left ventricle. It is a little टिल्टेड, तो इसलिए वो जो राइट एट्रियम है और द लेफ्ट वेंट्रिकल है वो थोड़े हार्ट के पीछे चले गए, right? And these are two pulmonary arteries that are supplying blood away from heart from the right ventricle to the lungs so that it can get oxygenated, because the blood that is coming from the upper body part is also deoxygenated, right? Means it is not rich in oxygen. It is not oxygenated. The lower body parts are also uh, supplying blood, or you can say the vena cavas are bringing deoxygenated blood into the right atrium. And then right ventricle also has got deoxygenated blood, and then it is supplied to the pulmonary arteries, right? So we will see the circulation, inshallah, in the cross-sectional area and how they are separated, right? In this view, you can see the pulmonary arteries, and these are the pulmonary veins that are bringing blood back into the left pulmonary, left atrium. And then from left atrium, it is brought into the left ventricle. And then from the left ventricle, it is sent to the aorta. This U-shaped, this tube is the elastic artery. And this elastic artery, why it is elastic artery? Anyone honest? क्यों elastic artery बोल रही हूँ मैं aorta को? It is elastic artery. Why? Why not muscular artery?
blood
Ans, जी बेटा.
to withstand high pressure of blood.
To withstand high pressure of blood, and you can say that it has got higher elastic muscle fibers. Okay, that's why it is called as elastic artery, because it is receiving blood directly from the heart. That's why it is elastic artery, because it is resisting more pressure, as you just said. Okay, and it is not near to the other organs. That's why it's an elastic artery. So
Ma'am,
actually
it
it
has
has got
collagen fibers in it as well.
collagen fibers तो बेटा supportive strengthening tissues होते हैं, and they're present in all blood vessels. Like veins में भी होते हैं लेकिन थोड़े होते हैं. ठीक है, elastic artery में collagen जो है वो जो external या outermost layer है उसमें भी होते हैं, और middle layer जो होती है उसमें भी होते हैं. elastic arteries भी दोनों में होती हैं, right? सिर्फ स्मूथ मसल्स का फर्क होता है कि स्मूथ मसल्स जो हैं वो मिडिल लेयर में होते हैं, लेयर में होते हैं प्रेजेंट. इलास्टिक आर्टरीज में इलास्टिक फाइबर्स तो दोनों लेयर्स में होते हैं, एक्सटर्नल एंड मिडिल बोथ, राइट? टू ब्रिंग मोर इलास्टिसिटी, ताकि वो जो प्रेशर से ब्लड इसमें एंटर हो तो वो एक्सपैंड भी करे आर्टरी और वापस रिकॉइल भी करे, राइट? सो व्हाट डू वी मीन बाय कोरोनरी आर्टरी, अलीजे? व्हाट आर कोरोनरी आर्टरीज?
Arteries
Alize, I asked you bete.
Ma'am, arteries which supply oxygen and nutrients
Alize, where are
directly
you?
to the
Wait, Anas.
cardiac muscle.
Anas, wait, Meri Jaan. Alize, where are you? Why aren't you
Yes,
answering me?
ma'am.
जी बेटे, अलीजे किधर हो बच्चे? बिजी तो नहीं हो?
नहीं मैम, मेरा तोता बहुत बोल रहा है. He's not letting me speak.
Okay. What are coronary arteries?
मैम, वो जो arteries है supply blood to the heart.
और तुम्हारे साथ तोता भी पढ़ता है बायोलॉजी?
मैम, वो इतना बोलता है, मुझे बोलने ही नहीं देता.
अच्छा, तो आप बेटे अपने बेडरूम में बैठो ना, नहीं तो तोते को भी साथ बिठा लो, थोड़ी बायोलॉजी वो भी सीख जाएगा. So coronary arteries are the arteries that are supplying blood to the muscles of the heart. Very good, Ans. Okay, okay, let's move on. Okay, so if we see no, the cross section of a heart, right? The left side of the heart they have given you here. This is basically showing you the muscles. This is the muscular wall that you can see. Let me change the color. Can you see this color on this diagram? Yes. So this is the muscle thickness of the ventricle that they have shown you. And here these muscles are called as papillary muscles. Can you see that? And these thread-like structures that are attached to this flap, or you can say cup-like structure, this is called as valve. And what is a valve? Valve basically prevents the backward flow of blood, or you can say it controls the one-way flow of blood, and it does not allow the blood to go back into the atrium. So this is the ventricular wall that you can see, right? And these are papillary muscles, and these are thin thread-like structures are called as tendons, right? We will talk more about them when we will talk about the uh, uh, opening and closure of the valves, right? And in the center of the cardiac, you can say chambers, or you can say the heart chambers, you can see that there is a septum present, and that septum is called as median septum, right? So this is basically the transverse section of the heart. And here you see that the pulmonary artery, the vena cavas bringing deoxygenated blood back into the right atrium. This is the right atrium. And as you can see, the thickness of the wall, right atrium wall, and the left atrium wall, they are thin walled. Why they're thin walled? Because they have to create the pressure that is needed to send blood, or you can say that is needed to transport blood from the atria to the ventricles, which are very near to one another. That's why not much pressure needs to be created. तो इसलिए ब्लड का प्रेशर क्योंकि कम रिक्वायर्ड होता है क्रिएट करना, तो इनकी वॉल्स अल्लाह ताला ने थिन दी हैं. Now, in comparison to atria, the ventricular walls, if you see, they are much thicker. And in comparison to the right ventricle and the left ventricle, you can see that the left ventricle has got much thicker walls, right? And right ventricle has got thin walls. Why? Because the right ventricle has to push the blood to the lungs, which are very near to the heart, right? They are not very far away like the whole body parts. And the left ventricle has to create more pressure because it has to send the blood to all the body parts, that is the head, shoulders, legs, everywhere, right? And these valves, they are present between the two atria and the ventricles, and they are called as atrioventricular valves. What? Atrioventricular valve, right? And the right one is called as tricuspid valve, and the left one is called as bicuspid valve, or sometimes it is also called as mitral valve, right? Mitral valve. And when the blood comes into the heart from the pulmonary veins because it is bringing blood back from the lungs, and vena cavas, they are bringing blood back from the head and from the lower body parts, right? And when the blood comes into the atria of its side, the atria will get filled up with the blood, and then afterwards they will squeeze or they will push the blood into the ventricles, right? This is called as atrial systole. Atrial systole means when the heart muscles start contracting and they start pushing the blood into the ventricles. And because of the pressure of the blood, because of the blood's pressure, what will happen? That the atrioventricular valves get open and the semilunar valve get closed. Why? Why am I talking about semilunar valves here? Because we can't see any semilunar valve here. Let me just change the I think the diagram because I don't like this diagram. This is a little blur, right? Let me open another one. This, can you see that? So this is the right atrium, right? And the right ventricle, right? And this one is the left atrium and the left ventricle. Right atrium and the right ventricle. So when the blood comes here into the right atria and the left atrium, right, what will happen? They will do the atrial diastole. And this atrial diastole is a very short period of time. So we can say a short term phase or short event. So when the atrial diastole will take place, right after that, the atrial systole also happens. What do we mean by atrial systole? When the atrial walls systole, when the atrial walls will start contracting and they will start pushing the blood. Obviously, when the blood will be pushed or the atria will be squeezing, the blood will be pushed against the walls. Obviously, it will also try to go back into the pulmonary uh, vein and the vena cavas, right? But what happens is that it does not go back into the veins. Why? Because in these veins, there are semilunar valves present. And in this vein, the semilunar valve present. So when the blood tries to go back, the cups of the valves will get filled up with the blood and they will allow the valves to get closed. And then the blood pressure direction will be on this side, due to which this atrioventricular valve and the tricuspid or bicuspid valve, you can say that they will open and they'll push the blood into the ventricles, the right ventricle and the left ventricle. And both the ventricles will start getting filled up with the blood and the ventricular diastole will happen. And then what will happen after during atrial systole, the atrioventricular valves will open, right? And semilunar valves will close, right? And this they open because of the pressure of the blood. And then what will happen? That the ventricular diastole will take place. Ventricular diastole means when the ventricles are filling up with the blood, right? Obviously, when the atria will squeeze, right, they will push the blood into the ventricles, and ventricular diastole will happen because the ventricles will be relaxing. Diastole means that they are relaxing. Systole means that they are contracting. And when the diastole will be taking place, the ventricles will be getting filled up with the blood, right? And when the ventricles will get filled up with the blood, now the ventricular systole will happen. And during the ventricular systole, what will happen? That the blood will be pushed against the walls again, right here in the ventricles, as you can see in this diagram, that the pressure will be exerted against the walls and the pressure will the blood will try to go back into the atrium. But what will happen? Because of this pressure coming against the walls, the blood will get filled up in these flaps, or they have got a got cup-like structures, and when they get filled up with the blood, what will happen that the papillary muscles that are present in the muscles of the heart, they will get contract, and the tendons that are attached to them, they will get slackened. Right? Let me show you this opening and closure of the valves in your book. Here you can see that the atrial contraction is taking place, right? The atria are squeezing and they're allowing the atrioventricular valves to open, and the semilunar valves in the veins will get closed. Even in the pulmonary artery and aorta, they are also closed because they have nothing to do with the atrial systole. And then the atria will push the blood into the ventricles. And when the ventricular filling up of the blood is taking place, this will cause the ventricular diastole. And ultimately, ventricular systole is happening here, and this is causing the atrioventricular valves to close and the semilunar valves to open. And this opening at the same time, the opening of the semilunar valves and the closure of the atrioventricular valve is taking place just because of the direction of the flaps, or you can say the direction of the valves present here. Now, let's have a look on how the valves get open and how the valves get closed. So during the atrial systole, what will happen that the pressure is coming from the atria, and they'll push the blood downwards towards the ventricles, and due to this, these cup-like structures are called as valves. They get open and the blood comes here into the ventricles. And when the blood comes into the ventricles, what will happen? It will try to go back into the atria when the ventricular systole will happen. Not diastole, systole will happen. And during that, the pressure of the blood is higher in the ventricles as compared to the atrium, right? So due to this, what will happen that the pressure of the blood will be pushed against the walls or against the cups of the atrioventricular valve, and this will cause, and during that, what will happen that the papillary muscles, can you see these papillary muscles here in the walls and the tendons attached to them, as well as the valves, right? So what will happen during this contraction of the ventricles? This will cause the papillary muscles to contract and the tendons to get relaxed. And this will cause the valves from being forced inside out, or you can say that the cups will get filled up with the blood and the valves will close. So this is how the atrioventricular valve is opening and its closure taking place, right? So during the ventricular systole, when the ventricles will contract and the blood comes from the ventricles against the walls, and in it gets filled up in the cups here, right, and causing the papillary muscles to contract and tendons to relax, so that the tendons loosens the, or when why they're getting slackened, because now when they will get slackened, they will lose the valve or they will leave the valve, right? Leave does not mean that they will get teared apart right from here, but they will just relax so that the valve can get closed. And here you can see that the semilunar valve, how it is opening and how it is closing, because semilunar valve is present between the ventricles and the pulmonary artery and the aorta. So the blood from the ventricular side, when comes here, it pushes the blood into the pulmonary artery or aorta. And when it tries to go back, what will happen that it will get filled up with the blood. These are the cups, right? And these cups, when get filled up with the blood, the semilunar valve will close, right? So this is how the semilunar valve is opening. Opening of both the valves is taking place because of the blood pressure, and closure is taking place because of the filling up of the blood into the cups of the semilunar valve, as well as the atrioventricular valve, that is causing the valves to shut close. Is that clear that how the valves opening and closure is taking place? अंश आदिल, आपको समझ आया है? अगर नहीं समझ आया, we can repeat it again, but I'm moving
आगे
back to the आ गया समझ?
Yes, ma'am.
अंश आपको समझ आया है? इसको हम repeat भी कर सकते हैं if you want. No problem.
नहीं मैम समझ आ गया
Very nice. So when the atrial systole takes place, the atria get contracted, or you can say their walls just squeeze and they'll push the blood against the walls. And when the blood moves against the walls or pushed against the walls, so what will happen? That there are some valves that get open, there are some valves that get closed, right? So here When the atria will get filled up with the blood, they will undergo atrial systole, atrioventricular valve will get open, and the blood goes into the ventricles. And when the ventricle systole takes place, it goes into the pulmonary artery. These are the two pulmonary arteries that you can see, and it also goes into the aorta. Here you can see. This is aorta, and this is pulmonary artery. And then pulmonary artery further splits into two so that it can supply blood, deoxygenated blood. Why deoxygenated? Because this is on the right side of the heart. And right side of the heart deals with deoxygenated blood, and the left side of the heart deals with oxygenated blood. Right? So from here, the oxygenated blood moves into the aorta to all the parts of the body, and from pulmonary artery, it is supplied to the lungs. So, this is how the circulation of the blood is taking place in the heart. I hope that's clear to all of you. Inshallah, I'll see you tomorrow now with some revision of the same topic, right? Atrial systole, diastole, as well as the cardiac control. Is that clear, everyone? Structure of heart आपने पहले IGCSE में भी किया हुआ है, so that's why it's not that big deal for you. So cardiac cycle we are done before in IGCSE, and you can also it's just a kind of revision. The new thing that you have studied is the opening and closure of the valves that you have never studied in IGCSE or O levels, right? And here how the ventricular valves are opening because of the atrial systole, and how the ventricular diastole is taking place, how the ventricular contraction causing the valves to open, valves to close. Because when the ventricular systole is taking place, semilunar valves get open, but the atrioventricular valves get closed. And how it is happening, we have seen in this diagram, right? So there is one more topic that is left in this chapter, and that is cardiac control. Inshallah, we will talk about this curve in our next class, as well as the cardiac control in our next class. So I hope that's clear. Inshallah, see you tomorrow now, right? Any question, anything that you want to ask me? I will ask you questions about the structure of the heart and the contraction and relaxation of the heart in my next class. So come prepared for that class, okay? Is that clear, everyone?
Okay.
Okay, take care of yourself. Have a good day.